use the KPIs to inform incentive plans. We help practices a lot design incentive plans, not just for providers based around hearing aid sales, but also for different roles within the audiology or ENT practice. What I've learned over 7 years of doing incentive planning for practices is really following 3 rules. And that is, define what success looks like in both business and patient terms. So something like, when you hit your 10 opportunities per week, we can achieve a balanced schedule that supports revenue and patient demand. And then number 2, use metrics that are easy for the staff to access. That's really where MVP comes into play. If it takes 4 hours to find and compile the data, then no one tracks it, and let alone no one analyzes it. And then review the metrics at the same frequency you expect the behavior to change. And so, MVP supports every one of those rules. An example is, just last week I was working with a practice who is introducing a new support staff member. So completely new role to the practice. They're an audiology private practice. They're introducing a hearing instrument specialist as a support staff role. They already have audiology tech or their patient care coordinator kind of act as that audiology tech. We wanted to design an incentive plan that had like clear productivity metrics and clear sales metrics. And so the first place we went was MVP, and we went actually into patient flow tab because, again, we're trying to look at metrics that we can access easily and we can analyze with the team frequently. We went in and looked at total appointments, for the clinic type, and looked at how many follow-up appointments based on per FTE this practice was doing, and set a reasonable goal for follow-up appointments for the hearing instrument specialist support staff. And then the other thing we did was go into KPI Center and look at other KPIs, but we were looking at the number of upgrade units. Maybe that's in sales here. Yeah. So in sales in the KPI Center is the number of upgrade units. So again, we looked at location where the support staff would be working, what the average upgrade unit interval and number of units had been monthly, and then set some realistic targets based on how we felt that the hearing instrument specialist was going to be setting up patients during their repair and routine follow-up conversations to get them interested in newer technology. And so we set those 2 goals. Those 2 goals will be really easy then for the leaders to pull up and manage with that new support staff. So, all of this, the forecasting, the operational clarity, it only works when staff can engage with the data themselves. And that's really where I see MVP drive alignment, is when, the team sees what the leaders see, performance naturally starts to shift. And I think we've heard that across these testimonials with Jim and Sarah and their work with their teams too. So, MVP is a lot like using a Fitbit. The more that you consistently check your steps or your sleep trends, the more you understand your own habits, and the easier it becomes to change them. And MVP works exactly that same way. When staff check their stats regularly, they start to see the business differently, and they connect their daily actions to outcomes, and they understand what drives the KPIs, not just what KPIs are. I mentioned this practice before that actually goes into the KPI Center and tracks about 10 different metrics. And, I'll kind of briefly show you what that, like a spreadsheet like that looks like. But, they might be looking at something like this where, they're tracking it across the year. They're looking at, different kind of 3 top KPIs, but they're tracking about 15 different KPIs here. And what they start to do is they start to notice how their behaviors change the KPIs. So they gain this financial literacy, and they also change their behaviors around it. So I'm continually impressed by the ways MVP really helps entire teams row in the same direction. And the customization, the clean visuals, the color-coded goals, it all gives leaders and staff the same clarity they need to make better decisions. And that's when sustained performance change really begins.